17 years later.
The fire began in the silence, not with screaming, not with steel, not even with thunder. It began with smoke. Einar smelled it before he saw it. He was still kneeling at the edge of the fjord, fingers tracing the cold water where his father's blood had drifted only days before. The sea was calm now, too calm, as if it had already swallowed the memory of that night. His oath still burned in his chest. He had sworn vengeance before the gods, sworn it with shaking hands and a boy's broken voice, and the gods had not answered. The wind shifted. A thin ribbon of smoke curled over the tree line behind the village. Einar frowned. No horns, no dogs barking, no sound of warning, only smoke. He stood slowly, heart tightening, not in fear, not yet, but in instinct. Something inside him recoiled before his mind understood. Then he saw it. Flames licking the thatched roofs. One house, then two, then three, and still no horn. His feet moved before thought could catch them. He ran. The village of Hrafnvik had survived raids before, survived winters that starved weaker settlements, survived storms that shattered boats against the cliffs. But this was wrong. The fire did not spread like an accident. It moved like intent. Einar reached the first house and nearly stumbled over a body, old Ketil, face down in the mud, no blade in him, no wound. His eyes were open, frozen. Einar swallowed. "Mother?" he whispered, though the word barely formed. A crash echoed from the longhouse. Flames were climbing its carved pillars, the same pillars his father had once rested his hand upon while speaking of honor and legacy. The same longhouse where Einar had been a child. The door burst open. A woman stumbled out, hair aflame. She did not scream. She collapsed. Einar rushed forward, but heat drove him back. The fire roared suddenly, violently, as if fed by something unnatural. Still, no attackers, no war cries, no steel, just fire. His chest tightened. This wasn't a raid. This was erasure. He turned, scanning the tree line, and that's when he saw them. Shadows, watching, not charging, not shouting, watching. 3 figures stood at the edge of the forest, cloaked, motionless, their faces hidden beneath hoods dark as ash. One of them tilted their head slightly as if observing him, as if measuring him. Einar's breath caught. The air felt heavier now, like the moment before a storm breaks. He wanted to run toward them, to scream, to demand why. But something deeper rooted him in place. Instinct whispered, "Not yet." A beam collapsed behind him. Sparks erupted into the sky, drifting upward like dying stars. The fire swallowed the longhouse roof. The shadows did not move. They did not need to. They had already won. A scream finally tore through the air, his mother's voice from inside. Einar lunged toward the entrance, ignoring the heat tearing at his skin. "Mother!" Smoke filled his lungs instantly. He could barely see. The roof groaned. He pushed deeper, past burning beams, past falling embers, and there, through the haze, he saw her, trapped beneath a fallen pillar. Her eyes met his, not afraid, not screaming, just knowing. The world narrowed, flames roared around them, and Einar understood something with terrifying clarity. This fire had not come for the village. It had come for him. The roof cracked, the pillar shifted, and everything began to fall. The roof gave way. A thunderous crack split the air as burning timber collapsed inward, sending a wave of sparks spiraling into the smoke-choked dark. Einar lunged forward, ignoring the heat that scorched his arms and face. The world had narrowed to a single point. His mother. The fallen pillar pinned her across the chest and shoulder. Flames crept along its length like hungry serpents. The wood groaned, ready to splinter. "Go!" she rasped. He shook his head violently. He planted his feet and pushed against the pillar. It did not move. His muscles screamed. Smoke clawed at his lungs. His vision blurred at the edges. "I swore," he coughed. "I swore I would protect what remains." Her lips trembled, not with fear, but with sorrow. "You are not meant to protect ashes, Einar." The beam shifted slightly under his weight. Hope surged. Another crash behind him. The doorway was nearly gone. The fire was closing. Outside, the wind howled through the burning rafters, feeding the blaze. It felt alive now, purposeful, directed. He pushed again. The pillar lifted an inch, then slipped. His hands burned as his grip failed. He cried out in frustration, more animal than boy. Her hand reached for his wrist, strong despite everything. "You must live," she said. Her eyes searched his face, memorizing him. "Your father's oath was not vengeance." The words struck harder than the smoke. "What?" he gasped. He saw what was coming. Another tremor rippled through the structure. Dust and embers rained down. "Those men in the forest," she whispered. "You saw them too?" he asked, panic rising. Her gaze hardened. "They are not raiders." The beam cracked again. Flames surged closer, licking at her cloak. "You must run now." "I won't leave you," he shouted. The roof groaned, a deep, splitting roar that vibrated in his bones. She pulled him closer with surprising force. "For once in your life," she breathed, "obey." Her hand moved to his chest, to his heart. "Your oath is not finished." The world exploded in heat and noise. A flaming rafter crashed between them. Einar was thrown backward, slammed against the wall. Pain burst across his spine. When his vision cleared, the pillar had collapsed fully. Fire swallowed the space where she lay. He tried to rise. His body refused. Smoke engulfed him, suffocating, blinding. A final sound reached him, not a scream, a whisper. Then the longhouse imploded. The impact hurled him through the doorway into the mud outside. He rolled, coughing violently, air slicing into his lungs like knives. He lay there, half conscious, staring at the sky. Ash drifted downward, soft, almost peaceful. The shadows at the tree line were still there, watching. One stepped forward, not enough to enter the light, just enough to make his presence known. Einar forced himself onto his elbows. Rage finally ignited, not wild, not uncontrolled, cold, focused. He tried to stand. His legs buckled. The figure raised a hand slightly, as if signaling restraint to unseen companions. They were not afraid of him. They were certain. The village continued to burn behind him. Screams faded into crackling wood. One by one, rooftops collapsed. No resistance, no battle, just systematic destruction. Einar's gaze locked onto the tallest of the three shadows. "You did this," he rasped. The wind carried his words, but no answer came. Instead, the figure slowly removed his hood, not fully, just enough for Einar to see a scar that ran from temple to jaw. A mark Einar recognized, a face he had seen once before, the night his father died. Memory struck like lightning. The silent rider, the one who had not drawn steel, the one who had simply watched. The man lowered his hood again, turned, and disappeared into the trees. The others followed, not in haste, not in triumph, but in certainty. They had not come to conquer, they had come to ignite something, and they had. Einar collapsed back into the mud, staring at the inferno that had been his world. The fire had taken his home, his mother, his past. But as the heat pressed against his skin, something else began to rise within him. Not grief, not yet. Something darker, something forming, and far beyond the burning village, hidden within the forest's shadow, unseen eyes continued to watch, waiting for what Einar would become. Dawn did not bring mercy. It revealed the ruin. Smoke hung low over Hrafnvik, thick and unmoving, as if the sky itself refused to breathe. The fire had consumed nearly everything. What remained stood in blackened skeletons, charred beams clawing at the pale morning light. Einar woke in the mud where he had fallen. For a moment, there was no memory, only cold. Then the smell returned, ash, burned wood, burned flesh, and it all came back. He did not cry. Something inside him had gone still. He pushed himself upright slowly. Every muscle protested. His skin blistered along his forearms where flames had kissed him. His throat felt torn raw. The longhouse was gone. Where it had stood was now a smoldering crater of beams and collapsed stone. He walked toward it. Each step felt unreal, as if he were walking through someone else's life. Bodies lay scattered across the village, some near doorways, some in the open, as if they had tried to flee but never made it far. No sword wounds, no arrows, just smoke, just fire. Systematic, intentional. He reached the longhouse remains and dropped to his knees without realizing it. The ground was still warm. His hands hovered over the ash. He did not dig. He knew. Instead, his gaze drifted to the tree line. Empty now, but not forgotten. They had watched. They had chosen. They had left him alive. Why? The question echoed louder than grief. A soft crunch of boots on charred earth broke the silence. Einar turned sharply. A figure moved through the smoke. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a soot-stained cloak. For a heartbeat, Einar thought the shadows had returned. His hand instinctively reached for a weapon he no longer had. The man stepped into clearer light. It was Torvald, one of the older warriors, scarred, half-blind in one eye, a man who had fought beside Einar's father for decades. Torvald's face was gray with ash. "You live," he said quietly. Einar did not answer. Torvald surveyed the destruction. "They came in the night," he muttered. "No ships, no warning. Fires started all at once." "You saw them?" Einar asked. Torvald hesitated. "Shadows," the same word. "They did not attack us," Torvald continued. "They sealed the exits, drove us inward, like cattle." Einar's jaw tightened. "They wanted no survivors," Torvald said. Einar's gaze lifted slowly. "But they left me." Silence lingered between them. Torvald studied him carefully now, not as a child, as something else. "Your father knew," Torvald said at last. The words struck like a blade. "Knew what?" Einar demanded. "That this was coming." Einar stood abruptly. "My mother said the same before she—" His voice faltered. Torvald's one good eye hardened. "Your father spoke of a faction, not raiders, not kings, something older." The wind shifted, stirring ash around their boots. He called them the Veiled. The name felt wrong in Einar's mouth, unnatural. "They do not conquer lands," Torvald continued. "They erase bloodlines." Einar felt the ground tilt slightly beneath him. Why ours? He asked. Torvald did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached beneath his cloak and pulled something free. A leather-wrapped bundle, burned at the edges. He handed it to Einar. I found this near the cliffs, hidden. Einar unwrapped it carefully. Inside was his father's arm ring and a fragment of carved wood, blackened but intact. A raven, split down the center, his breath caught, the symbol of their clan, broken. They were not just killing us, Torvald said quietly. They were sending a message. Einar stared at the broken raven. The memory of the scarred man's face burned in his mind. They wanted me to see, he whispered. Torvald did not disagree. The silence between them grew heavier. Around them, the last of the flames began to die. And in that stillness, something irreversible began forming inside Einar. Not rage, not grief, purpose, cold and sharpened. If they had spared him, it was not mercy, it was invitation. The smoke thinned by midday, but the silence did not. Hrafnvik no longer sounded like a village. No hammering of wood, no gulls circling for scraps, no distant laughter from fishermen returning with the tide. Only the crackle of dying embers and the slow, deliberate movement of two survivors walking through the remains of their world. Einar stood at the cliffs overlooking the fjord, the broken raven clutched tightly in his hand. Below, the water reflected the sky in cruel indifference. The sea had carried his father's blood days ago. Now it carried ash. Torvald approached quietly. There are 6 of us, he said, scattered, burned, but alive. 6, from nearly 50. Einar absorbed the number without visible reaction. They will look to someone, Torvald added. Einar did not turn. They will not look to me. They already are. The wind pulled at Einar's hair, carrying the scent of ruin inland. They erased our name, Einar said, burned our home, killed our kin. His grip tightened around the wooden raven until the charred edge cut into his palm and left me standing. Torvald's voice was steady. Your father once told me something the night before he died. Einar's jaw hardened. He said blood is not always ended by steel. Sometimes it is ended by fear. The words settled between them. And he feared them? Einar asked. No, Torvald replied. He feared what you would become if they came. Silence. Heavy. Measured. Einar finally turned. What does that mean? Torvald studied him. Truly studied him now. The boy was gone from his eyes. In its place stood something restrained, coiled. Your father believed you were meant for something beyond this village, Torvald said. He believed our blood carried something. A curse? Einar asked coldly. A legacy? Einar looked back toward the blackened ruins. If legacy ends in ash, it is no gift. Below them, movement caught his eye. 2 of the surviving villagers were dragging bodies toward a central pyre they were building near the shore. There would be no proper burial mounds, no carved stones, just fire. Fire had taken everything. Fire would take the rest. They will come back, Einar said suddenly. Torvald did not ask how he knew. Not to finish us, Einar continued. They believe it is already done. Then why return? Torvald asked. To see. The word lingered. To see if I understood. Torvald's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. And did you? Einar opened his palm, revealing the splintered raven. They do not want land, he said quietly. They do not want tribute. His eyes darkened. They want bloodlines erased, stories ended. The wind rose stronger now, pulling at their cloaks. And they believe I am the final page. Torvald stepped closer. Then you must decide, he said. Do you let the story end? Below, one of the survivors collapsed beside the pyre, overcome by grief. The sound carried faintly upward. Einar watched the smoke coil toward the sky. His mother's final words echoed inside him. Your oath is not finished. My father did not swear vengeance, Einar said slowly. No, Torvald agreed. He swore protection. The realization cut deeper than any blade. Protection, not of land, not of wood and stone, of blood, of something unseen. Einar closed his hand around the broken raven once more. The edges dug into his flesh. He welcomed the pain. They spared me, he said quietly, because they believe I am unformed. Torvald waited. Einar's gaze lifted toward the distant forest line where the shadows had stood. They believe I will act blindly, rage, charge. A long pause. They are wrong. The wind stilled for a heartbeat. Even the sea seemed to listen. Einar's voice lowered, not loud, but sharpened. If they wish to erase my blood, his eyes no longer carried the confusion of a grieving son. Only resolve. Then I will learn who they are. A distant rumble echoed across the water. Not thunder. Ships. Small silhouettes appearing at the horizon's edge, not from the direction of trade routes, from the north. Torvald followed his gaze. Do you see them? He asked. Einar did. 3 ships, black sails, approaching slowly, deliberately. And this time, they were not hiding. The ships did not rush the shore. They advanced with patient certainty, cutting through the gray water like blades through silk. Black sails hung heavy against the wind, marked with no sigil Einar recognized. No raven, no wolf, no serpent, nothing, as if they did not require symbols. Torvald's jaw tightened. They returned too soon. Einar did not answer. Below, the remaining villagers had seen them now. Movement stirred near the shoreline. Fear traveled faster than sound. A woman dropped the torch, meant for the funeral pyre. A man stumbled backward, eyes fixed on the approaching vessels. 6 survivors, against 3 ships. Einar felt the weight of it. Not hopelessness, calculation. They want us to see them this time, Torvald said quietly. Yes, Einar replied. The ships slowed just beyond arrow range. Anchors dropped. No war horns. No shouted commands. A small boat was lowered from the lead vessel. 3 figures stepped into it, cloaked, deliberate, the same number as before, the same silence. Einar began walking down the cliff path. Torvald caught his arm. If you go to them alone, I must, Einar said. His voice held no tremor. Torvald searched his face for hesitation. Found none. Below, the small boat reached the shore. The 3 figures stepped onto wet sand as if onto sacred ground. Their boots did not rush forward. They waited. For him. Einar reached the beach moments later. The surviving villagers gathered behind him, uncertain, broken, afraid. He felt their fear like heat at his back. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward. Slowly, he lowered his hood. The scar, temple to jaw. The same man. Up close, his eyes were pale gray, almost colorless. You survived, the man said. His voice was calm, measured. Einar said nothing. The man studied him carefully, as one examines a blade's edge. "You watched it burn," the scarred man continued. "Yes?" A faint nod. "Good." The word struck like a slap. Behind Einar, one of the survivors began to sob quietly. The scarred man's gaze flickered past Einar briefly, counting. "6, he observed. "Fewer than expected." Torvald shifted, but Einar lifted a hand slightly without looking back. Stillness. The sea lapped softly at the shore. "Why?" Einar finally asked. No accusation, just the question. The scarred man tilted his head. "Because your bloodline should have ended generations ago." The words did not surprise Einar. They confirmed. "My father knew of you," Einar said. "Yes." "And feared you." A faint smile touched the corner of the man's mouth. "He understood necessity." "Necessity?" The word twisted. "You burn villages in the name of necessity?" Einar asked. "We erase instability," the man replied evenly. "You were meant to die with them." A murmur of horror rippled behind Einar. "But you did not," the man continued, "which presents curiosity." Einar stepped forward, closing the distance slightly. "You spared me. We allowed probability to choose." The answer was colder than cruelty. "You believe I am a threat," Einar said. The scarred man considered this. "We believe your lineage carries potential." "For what? For disruption?" Wind tugged at cloaks and hair alike. The other two cloaked figures remained silent, faces hidden. "You could have killed me in the longhouse," Einar said quietly. "Yes." "But you did not." "No." Silence stretched thin. "Why?" Einar demanded. The scarred man's eyes hardened, not with anger, but with evaluation. "Because sometimes," he said softly, "a threat reveals itself more clearly when left alive." The meaning settled heavily. They were studying him, testing him. "If I kneel," Einar said, "will you leave the rest?" A sharp intake of breath from behind him. Torvald whispered, "Einar!" The scarred man's gaze sharpened. "You would kneel?" "For their lives." The man looked past him again at the 6 survivors, calculating. Then, "No." The answer was immediate. "We do not negotiate with bloodlines." The words struck final. Einar felt something inside him lock into place. Not rage, not desperation. Understanding they had not come to bargain, they had come to witness. "To see what I would choose," Einar said quietly. The scarred man gave the faintest nod. "And what will you choose?" he asked. The sea seemed to still, even the wind quieted. Einar turned slightly, just enough to look back at the broken remnants of Hrafnvik. Ash drifting, smoke rising, 6 trembling souls behind him. Then he faced the scarred man again. His voice was steady. "You wanted to see what I would become." A long pause. "You're about to?" The scarred man did not move, but something in his eyes shifted. Interest, not fear. Behind Einar, Torvald stepped forward, placing himself half a stride to the side, close enough to fight, far enough to let Einar stand first. The other survivors remained near the pyre, fragile silhouettes against the gray shore. "You speak with conviction," the scarred man said. "Conviction is common in boys who have lost everything." Einar did not flinch. "I am not a boy." "No," the man agreed softly. "Not anymore." The words were not mocking. They were observational, measured. The second cloaked figure shifted slightly, adjusting their stance. Not aggression, preparation, Einar noticed. He noticed everything now. Wind direction, distance to the boat, position of the ships beyond arrow range. He understood with cold clarity that if blood spilled here, none of the 6 would survive the retaliation. This was not a battlefield. It was an examination. "You believe our blood is dangerous," Einar said. "We believe it is unpredictable," the scarred man corrected. "Because of prophecy?" Einar pressed. A flicker. There, small, but real. The man's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You speak of things you do not understand." "Then make me understand." Silence expanded between them like a drawn blade. At last, the scarred man stepped closer. Close enough now that Einar could see faint burn marks along his hands. "Old scars. Long before your village stood," the man said quietly, "your ancestors defied an order older than any king." Torvald stiffened. The man continued, "They believed blood should not be governed." "And you do?" Einar asked. "We believe chaos must be prevented." The answer came without hesitation. "You burned children to prevent chaos?" The scarred man's eyes did not waver. "We burned futures that would fracture the world." The sea struck the shore harder now, waves slapping against stone. Einar felt something shift inside him. Not outrage, not horror, recognition. They believed themselves righteous, which made them more dangerous than raiders. "If you truly believed I was a threat," Einar said slowly, "you would kill me now." The man studied him. "Perhaps. But you won't." A faint narrowing of pale eyes. "You want to see whether I fulfill your fear." The wind rose again, tugging violently at cloaks. Behind Einar, one of the survivors whispered a prayer. The scarred man stepped back. "You have one chance," he said. Torvald's grip tightened on the hilt at his side. "Leave this land," the man continued. "Take those who remain. Disperse. Change your name. Let your blood fade quietly." A pause. "And live." The offer hung heavy. Einar felt every heartbeat. If he agreed, they would survive. If he refused, the ships waited, the archers unseen. 6 lives balanced on a decision. Torvald's voice was barely audible behind him. "Choose wisely." Einar closed his eyes for a brief moment. He saw his mother beneath the fallen beam. He heard her whisper, "Your oath is not finished." He opened his eyes. "If I run," he said quietly, "you will hunt us anyway." The scarred man did not answer. That was answer enough. "And if I kneel," Einar continued, "you will burn the next village who carries our name." Still silence. Einar stepped forward. One deliberate step. "I will not fade." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. The scarred man's expression hardened, not in anger, but in acceptance. "So be it." He turned toward the boat. The other 2 followed. No blades drawn, no immediate slaughter. The test was complete. As they stepped into the small vessel, the scarred man looked back one final time. "Einar!" he called. The use of his name froze the air. "You are now seen." The boat pushed off. The ships began to turn, not attacking, not retreating in fear. Departing with purpose fulfilled, Torvald exhaled slowly. They let us live. Einar watched the black sails disappear into mist. "No," he said. "They marked us." The wind carried the last of the smoke from Hrafnvik out to sea. Behind him, the pyre was lit at last. Flames rose again, but this time by their own hands. Einar stood before it, face illuminated by firelight. Everything he had been was ash. Everything he would become was forming in its place, and far beyond the horizon. The Veiled prepared because they had not extinguished a bloodline. They had ignited it.
Episode 3 coming soon. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The next chapter begins soon.